I'm Marilyn Triel with The Better Part. In 1908, an international race around the world took place in the new sensation automobiles. The United States driver won. In 2014, a commemorative tour of their historical route was made. Our guest organized the tour and drove a 1928 Plymouth Roadster. It's a lot of good stories to tell, so stay tuned and hear some of them. Our guest owns and restores antique automobiles. He has been fascinated with the great race of 1908. In fact, in 2008, he arranged a 100th anniversary tour of the portion of the race which crossed America. Well, that was only a warm-up. I'd like to introduce Luke Rizzuto to tell you the rest. Hi, Luke.
How you doing?
I'm doing great.
Good.
Now, would you briefly describe and summarize that 1908 race for us so we get a feel of what this is all about?
Oh yeah, it's the 1908 Great Race was from New York to Paris. 4 teams: Italy, Germany, France, and the U.S. And you can imagine no roads, no gas stations.
And it was around the world.
It was around the world, and it went across this country, and then in Seattle they shipped to Yokohama, Japan, and then started in Vladivostok, Russia, and went on to Paris. And the American team won. Took them 167 days to do it, and it was a very grueling race.
There weren't even roads in those.
No roads,
dirt, huh?
wagon trails, lots of mud bogs.
No fuel to speak
No
of.
fuel. They had to stage fuel. It was
an undertaking.
That was an undertaking. It was like going to the moon in those days. Because no one ever thought about it. In fact, George Schuster took the race because he thought it was impossible to last a couple weeks and they'd stop. Needless to say that he stayed with it for 167 days and did the race.
He actually did it on a short notice too, I understand.
Yeah, he had a 24-hour notice. The Americans weren't going to be involved. And Teddy Roosevelt called up his good friend E.R. Thomas of the Thomas Flower Company and said, no, we need, this is world recognition, we need a racer in there. So he called up George Schuster, said, you got to be in Times Square tomorrow morning. You're racing around the world.
Well, this is a car you did your tour in.
Yes, this is a 1928 Plymouth. We went ahead and put a slant 6 running gear in it because in Russia, if you don't do 50 miles an hour, you get run off the road. So we had to make it more roadable, but it is a completely stock body. My buddy John Quam that owns the car that was drove with me drug it out of his dad's barn, washed it, clear coated it, and then all the signatures you see on it, there's over 300 signatures. These are people we met and they helped us along the way, our translators and guides and people like that. And so we're preserving this car in history.
Well, tell us about your tour. You went over 16,000 miles.
Yeah, from my house in the Santa Cruz Mountains going west around the world, back to my house is 16,358 miles. That's driving miles. That's not airline miles. That's not shipping miles. That's in the seat of this car.
How long did it take?
We were on the road about almost 4 months. We were in Europe and Asia for three months.
Well, tell us the routes that you followed.
We shipped it from Oakland to Alameda to Yokohama, Japan. Picked it up in customs in Japan and drove across Japan. The original port that George Schuster shipped out was Suruga, but they don't ship out of there anymore. There's no ferries that run out of there. So we had to go about 75 more miles to reach the port, and then we ferried up to Vladivostok, Russia, and had to wait there a day to get the car out of customs there. And then we started our trip. And
so what did you do in Vladivostok while you were
we saw the city. It reminded me a lot of San Francisco. It's a nice old city. Interestingly enough, 2 German architects and in 1895, built the first modern office building there. It was the first building to have an elevator, central plumbing, and central heat. And then we went by, we found out where Yul Brynner's house, where he was born at, and coincidentally, that house today is a barber shop.
Interesting.
I was going to go in and ask for a Yul Brynner, but I realized I have one already.
Well, that's cute. And then, so you crossed Siberia. What was it like going through Russia? Because they don't have tourists there very in that area.
Actually, a Russian border guard hugged me there and said, "Welcome to Russia. We don't get Americans through here that often." So Siberia, though, for 6,000 miles to Moscow was actually just rolling meadows and grain fields and birch forests. It was very pretty and lush, but nothing dramatic. When we went into China from Vladivostok, that was the one border that we had to cross that separated us from other people that did this venture. We're the only two people that has ever reenacted the Great Race accurately. And that border is a commercial border only, trucks and buses only, no pedestrians, bicycles, or cars. So we had to pay a semi-truck driver $500 to take this car about 5 miles. We trucked it across the border. And then I had to, because I was a rider at the time, I had to pay a $50 bus ticket to drive 100 yards across the border to the Chinese customs. And then we were on our way. We went through China and Mongolia and then back into Russia from there.
What did you do for fuel?
Believe it or not, in the middle of Siberia, in the middle of nowhere, I never lost a cell phone signal, and every hotel, and some of them were marginal, always had internet, and there was always a gas station about 20 miles apart.
Amazing.
So we took extra gas, but we used it a couple times, but right after we poured it in, 5 miles later, there was a gas station. So
was there a lot of countryside, like country roads in Russia? I'm thinking it must have been kind of primitive.
It was the Trans-Siberian Highway. If you can pick the worst dirt road in this country, make it double wide, and then have to drive at 50 miles an hour with semi-trucks, that's the Trans-Siberian Highway.
Goodness.
There's potholes a foot deep. When they grind out pavement, there's no sawhorses around it. You actually drop into it because you can't see it. Any construction, there's no flagman. You drive around bulldozers, you drive around road rollers, graders. It's a very pioneering situation. I enjoyed it personally. I thought it was a great adventure.
Okay, well, you must have had so many exciting highlights and anecdotes. Why don't you just take us on, tell us your trip, where you went and so forth, and maybe little things that happened along the way that you think could be
Oh, sure.
fun to hear.
Like I say,
we go from there.
We shipped to Yokohama. Japan's a very sterile, clean country. And then we went up to Vladivostok, and I got 1,000 stories I could tell you. And then we, the border between China and Russia again, we thought we'd get through there pretty quick. But we got the first 2 signatures we needed. The third signature, the guy took a 2.5-hour lunch break. Our Chinese guide was irritated because he had to make a flight, so he's an ex-Chinese major in the military, so he walked right into the customs office, into their meeting. And I don't know what he said to him, but 5 guys came out, took pictures of the car, and one guy said, "Come here, we'll get you through customs at 4 o'clock." And we thought, we started at 8 in the morning. So we thought we were through. Well, that was the Chinese customs, but then we had to hit the Russian customs, and everybody came out from Russia and took photos of the car, and we sat in the had them sit in the car and enjoy it. We thought we'd be through here quick. It was 10 o'clock by the time we got through there, and our Russian guide that was going to meet us was there since 8 o'clock in the morning. So at 10 o'clock at night, she's sunburned, no buildings. And the truck drivers thought she was a hooker, so they kept propositioning her. And then we went to the hotel, and the hotel was a gravel road to the hotel, and it was just an old Soviet barracks hotel. But the people were very friendly. It was very clean, small beds. clean bathrooms, and really good food. And that's the first night in Russia there, and then we started going west from there.
So the guards were hospitable then.
Very much so. I had a Russian guard hug me and say, "We don't get Americans through here. Welcome to Russia," you know. And the Chinese police saluted us when they found out what we were doing. We had 4 Chinese police officers salute us and say, "Good luck on your trip." And everybody was so friendly. I never felt unsafe at all.
I noticed you didn't wear your T-shirt, but you had a T-shirt with the logos.
Yeah, the longest auto race logo on it. Yeah.
And I do know that you had to bribe some Russian guards with T-shirts.
Yeah, a friend of ours met us in Moscow, and she was driving a vehicle of another couple that came with us, and a Russian police officer hit her with the wand and told her to pull over. She pulled over, and they put her in the back of their police car, and I would thought, oh, you know, there's going to be a problem here. And then the guide got out, went in back of the police car, and then all of a sudden they get back in their car and they drive off. And at the next gas station, said, "What happened?" And she said, "Well, it was a shakedown. They wanted 5,000 rubles to buy us out of the ticket, but our guide talked us down to 1,000 rubles and 2 Great Race T-shirts."
Well, that's a pretty good deal then.
Yeah, it was a good deal, you know.
Well, and from there?
You know, we hit the city of Kazan, which George Schuster, believe it or not, in 1908, he had a transmission shipped from Buffalo, New York to Russia, and it only took 2 weeks to get the transmission there, but they lost it on the Trans-Siberian Railroad. So George Schuster in Kazan got on the Trans-Siberian Railroad, and for 3 days he went up and down every stop to find where the transmission was, and he found it and then repaired it in Kazan.
Oh, my goodness.
And that's a real pretty city, by the way. All the cities we went through are very pretty, and they have a lot of history to them. Lake Baikal is the world's largest freshwater lake. In 1908, George Schuster took an icebreaker ferry across there because there was no roads around it, and we saw that icebreaker in a museum there. That was a fantastic journey in itself. Lake Baikal is just a very pretty area in Russia, very dramatic.
Where'd you go from Russia?
We went through St. Petersburg. I went to a ballet there in St. Petersburg as I was there. I'm not a ballet person, but I thought it would be a great experience. And then going into Latvia was a little bit of a problem because John had lost his paperwork in Russia, so we were undocumented for about 2 weeks before he got his passport back, and the papers for this car were copies. And Latvia, because now we were in the EU, you needed the original copies. Well, they held us up for about 3 hours there, and then Leo, that had his 2008 GMC Envoy there, didn't have a front license plate because Florida doesn't issue front license plates, but the EU requires it. So they didn't want to let us in, but the head guard there was a young kid, and we kind of outweighted him and stuff, and gave him a couple hours, and then he let us through with the copies. But Leo had to drive around again, and when he drove around through Russia and back again, Russia said, "Well, we're not going to even document you. Just go around." So when he hit Latvia again, the guard said, "You're still here?" And he goes, "Oh, get out of here." So they let us through there after about a 3-hour layover. But then we're in the EU, and the EU has superior roads and stuff like that. And we went through Latvia, Lithuania. We blew out all 4 shocks in Siberia on the car. So in Vilnius, Lithuania, we bought 4 shocks. The eyes were too small, so I found a machine shop that had to machine the eyes, and then I slid a 1991 Honda coil spring over the shock and bolted it up, and that was our makeshift repair on the car so we could finish the race.
So you didn't have to have 1928 parts then?
No, we brought a lot of extra parts along, but the car didn't have that many problems. It was just the rough roads.
What kind of mileage did you get?
You got 22 miles to the gallon on regular gas.
Good.
And Russia has 5 different types of grades of gas, but our guide said, no, you don't understand. It's all regular gas. They just charge you extra for the other 5 that aren't there. So we constantly bought regular gas.
The gas story.
Yeah.
So did you use the GPS or
No,
modern maps?
We used just regular maps. Once in a while, we used the GPS in Europe, but in Russia, we just used regular maps.
Did you have a copy of the old original maps? And
We had the newest maps we could find, but they aren't really accurate. But we had to, with our guides and stuff, we had to play the game and get through it.
because names changed on.
Yeah, the cities.
Towns and stuff like.
When I went through George Schuster's diary of 1908, the names have changed 3 and 4 times because there was 2 world wars, a Bolshevik revolution, a collapse of communism and stuff like that. So it was. John did most of the work on that. It was quite a chore to get the exact route.
I bet it took a while.
It did.
So then, after you got out of Eastern Europe, where did you go?
We went after Lithuania. We went back into Stalingrad, which is Russia again. And then right before the Polish border, when I thought we were there, 2 Russian police officers pull us over. And I thought, oh man, now what? And they came out and said, oh, we saw you 2 days ago, but we were too busy. So we want to know about the car and stuff like that. So we let them sit in the car, and they let us sit in their patrol car, and they let us handle their baton. And it was like old home week. And then they said, hey, good luck on your trip. And then we went into Poland, and we went through Poland and Belgium. We stayed in Chimay, which they make the famous beer. And then we ended up in Paris on Bastille Day. And at the Eiffel Tower, we witnessed.
Surprise?
It was by accident. I watched 500,000 French people at the Eiffel Tower sing the French national anthem, and they had tears in their eyes. They love their country as much as we do. And we got a photo op in front of the Eiffel Tower, and that ended the great race experience. And then, because we were in Europe already, we decided to go further. So we drove through France, Germany again, where we met a couple that were on my 2008 race, and we spent a night with them. And then went on to Denmark, where we witnessed a all-American car show. It's an annual car show, again by accident, and 600 cars showed up.
From America?
No, from
just Europeans.
From Scandinavia. Scandinavia
Uh-huh.
loves American cars.
Really?
So they came out, and I witnessed a beautiful 58 Impala convertible towing a travel trailer. They tow travel trailers there. They got burnout pads. They got drag racing, and that was just a great moment there. And then from there we ferried up to Iceland and drove the ring road around Iceland 1,200 miles. And in Reykjavik, we accidentally met a guy that's a member of their car club, and he invited us to their car club. So we went there, and there's 1,000 members in this car club, and 90% of the cars are American.
Really? Well, that's good to know. I understand that the highways in Iceland are really good, which kind of surprised me.
Yeah, actually the roads in the EU are excellent roads.
They're newer,
Russia was
I
really
suppose.
bad, but in the EU was great. Iceland was breathtakingly beautiful. I highly recommend you go to Iceland. It's just dramatic, lush, waterfalls. We even witnessed where there was a spot where there's a beautiful waterfall and kind of a pool of water, and in 840 AD, I think 7 or 8 tribes created the first democracy. So Iceland is the oldest democracy on earth, and it started in 840 AD.
I never knew that.
Very, very historical.
I have to look that up.
Yeah.
So then from there, what
From
did you
there,
do?
after that, we saw a glacier that was melting, and we followed it down.
Tell me that.
And well, it was very
No more
interesting though.
melting
There was
glaciers.
chunks of ice. It was floating down a river, and the ice that was probably about 2 or 3 ton boulders would hit the ocean, and the ocean would wash them up on this black sand volcanic beach and just set them there to melt. On this trip, I got over 3,500 pictures. It was a very interesting trip. And then from there, we ferried down to the Faroe Islands and stayed about 3 days there and just drove around them. Again, very lush, very dramatic. Every house has either an ocean view or a canyon view or a fjord view. I mean, just beautiful. And then we ferried back to Denmark, and we drove to Copenhagen. Stayed a couple days in Copenhagen. That's where we shipped the car out of to New York. And then we flew home. And then about a month went by, and when the car had landed in New York, we flew back to New Jersey because we had it shipped to a warehouse there. And we took the Yellowstone Trail home from Plymouth, Massachusetts to Seattle, Washington. And the Yellowstone Trail is the first transcontinental highway that was completed in 1911, but it didn't get any press because it was all volunteer labor and donations. So.
You didn't go back then to Times Square.
No, because we did the American leg already.
Ended.
Yeah,
yeah,
we did that already. Yeah.
So what were you doing in New Jersey then?
Well, we had kind of a neat experience in New Jersey. This car was in a warehouse, and they wouldn't let us drive it out. The warehouseman said, "No, you have to push it out of there." And this Italian gentleman in a nice suit came out and asked if the car ran. And we said, yeah. And he goes, why don't you drive it out of here? And we said, well, because the warehousemen don't want to do it. And I'll correct his language, but he said, start it up and drive it out. And then he yelled to the warehouseman, move the forklift out of the way so these gentlemen can get out of there. Now, he didn't exactly say it in that language, but
he wanted you out of there.
He wanted us out of there, and he wanted to see the car run. So he did that, and then we stopped under a bridge to look at some of the tools we had and make sure everything was there. And it was like in The Godfather, I told John, I said, okay, we don't want to look in the bushes too deeply. Let's just do the car and get out of here.
No horse's head. So.
You never know, you know. So that's where we start our American leg right there.
I see. Well, during this trip throughout Europe and in Asia and so forth, you must have attracted so much attention from people.
Oh, very much so. This car actually broke a lot of ice. Many people just came up and talked to us and stuff. Probably the most photographed car last year. Everybody. There's hundreds of thousands of photographs on this car over the venture, on the internet and everything. And all the people were very friendly. You know, all the working class people don't really care what's going on. They just live happy lives and they work and stuff like that. And I think politicians are our problem.
So when we stopped somewhere, then people would gather around, or did they actually follow you?
Some actually chased us down, some followed us, but most of the time you pull into a gas station, there'd be 30 people around it and photographing and want to photograph. So we let people sit in the car and photograph themselves and stuff like that. It was, you know, not an issue. I think we were great ambassadors for the United States, actually. We were very friendly, and everybody just loved what was going on.
Good. I recall that when you did the 2008 just anniversary trip across the U.S., that other antique drivers kind of would join on different legs and follow you across. Did any of that happen over there?
Yeah, we had a few. There's no old cars in Japan. We didn't see many in Russia because Russia was closed off for so long. China didn't have anything, but once in a while an old Russian Volga would show up or something. Or in one city, a 1938 was a German car. I never heard of it before this. I can't remember what it was. It was. But it had a Russian flathead engine in it and a Toyota transmission because they couldn't get parts for the car.
I know that you had to send to Los Gatos for parts for this car while you were over there.
Oh yeah, when we blew out all 4 shocks, we couldn't find them over there initially. So I called up Dwayne at A&M Auto Supply in Los Gatos, and he air freighted overnight to us the 4 shocks. And when it hit Russia in Moscow, they refused it because it was over the $400 limit, because the shocks only cost $350, but they added the air freight, which was $275, so they sent them back to the United States.
Oh dear.
So then my friend Kathy that flew over there, I said, why don't you grab them and see if you can carry them on the airliner. They wouldn't let her carry it, and they wouldn't let her check in because they were pressurized units. So that's when we had to make do with what we had and find shocks that fit in Europe and stuff like that.
Well, you said over 300 signatures on this car?
Yes.
You did have some guides then. You had guides taking you around different
Yes,
places.
we contracted with Muir Corporation up in Seattle that specializes in China and Russian tours, and we gave Doug Grimes the path that we had to take, and he said, we've never done this before, so you're going to pioneer the trip for us. So he set up all the guides. When we landed in Japan, there was a guide there for us, and he's also an interpreter, and he took us around. And then when we hit China, Sim was there, the Chinese guide, and he took us all the way through China. And then we had Casina in Russia. So Muir Corporation set up everything. They handled our visas and meals here and there in all the hotels. And he warned us about some of the hotels, but frankly, I've stayed in worse hotels in this country. All the hotels in Siberia were, I thought, quite clean and everything.
Well, it was a pleasure trip then. It wasn't grueling sleeping under the car in Siberia like they did on the first race.
Right.
In the mid of winter and the snow.
And we expected to do that, actually.
You did.
But nothing happened. The car stayed together. Nothing happened, so we got good hotel accommodations every night.
How much does a trip like that cost per person, too?
We actually did it really cheaply because the original Great Race that went bankrupt in 2008 wanted $109,000 each for what we did for $34,000, and that was shipping
per person.
Per person. That was shipping, gasoline, all the hotels, all the fees, visas, all the repairs for the whole trip. From my house to my house was $34,000.
Basically a 4-month
Four-month trip.
Yeah, 4 months.
Yeah. And I'd like to thank a few people, if I may.
Go ahead.
Sotheby's International up in San Carlos sponsored our website. So World Auto Tour is our website, and you can see all of our blogs on there. And then I also mentioned Doug Grimes up at Muir Corporation in Seattle. If you want to take a tour, A&M Auto Supply, and many friends helped me out money-wise and stuff like that, and so I was just very thankful.
Well, I know you had a wonderful time, and thank you for coming to tell us about your trip and the great race.
That's my pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
You're welcome.
I appreciate what you do for me.
Okay.
Yeah.